Final Fantasy IX is one of the most beloved games of all time. It may have come out over 25 years ago, which in itself makes me feel quite old, but it holds up really well even today. And like most games from that era, it is filled to the brim with plenty of strange hidden secrets. When it comes to finding them though, some are quite reasonable and easy to find. But then, there are a few that are hidden behind such obnoxious methods that it's a miracle that anyone found them at all. Today, we're gonna talk about some of the most intriguing secrets hiding within this game. If you're a fan of FF9, then you may have heard about a few of these already, but I'm sure there's gonna be at least one that you never knew about before. So I hope you've got your snacks and about 9 liters of Pepsi ready, for it is time for us to delve into the secrets of Final Fantasy IX. As you make your way through the forests of Gaia, you may randomly run into a mysterious, rather disturbing looking creature known as the Ragtime Mouse, or Ragtimer. This thing is sort of a game show host. What the heck is this abomination doing in this game? Who knows? The game does not offer any explanations about that. It's sort of like a fourth wall breaking Easter egg, so a bit like the Deadpool of this world, I guess, just not as cool. In any case, when you run into it, it'll ask you a true or false question. These questions are tied to the world of FF9, so the host here is kinda trying to see how well you understand the lore of this game. If you answer correctly, you will get a bunch of gil, after which the battle will end. Ragtime Mouse can be found quite a few times, although the number of times it can be encountered does depend on how far you are in the game. After getting the Hildegard 3 airship, all encounters become available. The first 15 times you find it, it'll randomly ask you one of 15 possible questions. The 16th question is always gonna be the same one, and it'll only be asked if you've already answered the previous 15. The last one is, you can defeat Ragtimer. The answer, obviously, is true. Now, I know what you're thinking. Editor man, that's all fine and dandy, but how the diddly do I kill this thing? Your violent need to put this thing down is understandable. We can't do it directly though. If we try to attack it, it'll just run away. But there is a way. To do that, you have to try and find it one more time after the 16th question. If you answered them all correctly, the Ragtimer will finally perish, never to be seen again. For getting all the right answers, you'll get a bunch of EXP and a whole lot of gil, plus a protect ring. In case you're wondering about the incredibly specific amount of EXP and gil that was received, well, there's a reason for that. Gokuro-san is Japanese for good job. The number 5 in Japanese is go, the number 9 is ku, the number 6 is ro, and number 3 is san. So writing 5963 can kinda be pronounced good job in Japanese. So yeah, it's basically a pun. But wait, we are not done here. There is one more secret about the Ragtimer that most people don't know. The game won't even make any mention of it. The card that the Ragtime Mouse is holding actually has Japanese text on it. On that card is the 17th hidden question. It says, Pop Quiz, FF10's theme is guts, true or false? That is, obviously, referring to Final Fantasy X, which came out about a year after FF9. I don't think its main theme was called guts, so we do have the answer to this hidden question. Even if we don't get anything here for knowing that, at least we do get to destroy this unholy creation at the end of the day. I guess that is our real reward here. Next up, during your travels, you may find some unusual coins in certain specific locations on Gaia. They bear the names of the zodiac signs, so you'll know when you find one. The vast majority of them are just lying around somewhere, in somewhat out of the way places. But my favorite one has to be the Gemini coin. To get it, you need to throw 10 gil into the fountain in Trino 13 consecutive times. How in the monkey was someone supposed to figure this out, I wonder? Anyway, these are the Stellazio coins, and they are quite valuable. You see, there is an individual in Trino who will be happy to take these coins off your hands and give you some cool rewards in return. Queen Stella has some nifty goods if you have the coins. There are 12 coins that can be found, but after you trade in all 12 to the queen, she will say, something is missing. According to my information, there are 12 Stellazio. Then why do I feel that I'm missing one? The answer is, because there is one more. There is a secret 13 Stellazio coin. How are we supposed to find it? Well, there are writings on each of the 12 coins we found so far, and the queen will give them all back to us so we can figure out the mystery. If you check out the coins in your inventory, you'll see that there's a story being told through them. Essentially, 11 zodiacs were thirsting over the 12th one, which is Virgo. They were all trying to figure out how to win her heart. Hidden within the story, we can find directions that will guide us to the last coin. You might be thinking, whoa, this is awesome. What kind of secret, never before seen location will we find by putting these clues together? Well, I wouldn't be too excited if I were you. Even though the premise here is quite intriguing, the conclusion is kinda tame. The clues basically say that we have to head northeast to Kwan's dwelling in the cave area, near the bottom of the screen, close to the hot spring. You see, the hidden 13th Stellazio is in the same place as the Scorpio one. I guess it was for the sake of the story being told? Spoiler alert, Scorpio ends up being the one who gets with Virgo. Still, I was kinda hoping that we'd be led to some new, undiscovered place or something. In any case, after giving all 13 Stellazio to Queen Stella, we'll get the ultimate prize. A hammer! But wait, this is no ordinary hammer. This is actually Cinna's hammer. You remember Cinna, right? He's the weird, freaky clown-like member of the Tantalus group. You can see him wielding the hammer whenever he's on screen. He never really goes anywhere without it. But why does Queen Stella have Cinna's hammer? And why is it the ultimate prize for collecting all 13 Stellazio? Final Fantasy IX has no time to answer such reasonable questions. No. So the only obvious theory that makes sense to me is that Cinna is actually Queen Stella's lover. I mean, it makes me extremely uncomfortable to think about that. But hey, the greatest mysteries require us to become truly uncomfortable to solve. As to why Queen Stella would give Cinna's long and hard hammer to us, maybe she's done with whatever Cinna is, and wants to get rid of everything that reminds her of Cinna. Although I don't want to think about how the hammer was being used before. Anyway, while it may seem like a piece of garbage, this thing is legitimately very valuable. If the hammer is in your possession at the end of the game, you will get to see a special, secret, additional scene. During the ending, we get to see a play being performed by the Tantalus crew. It's pretty simple. Princess Cornelia is trying to run away with Marcus, who is a lowly peasant. As they are discussing their plans, Blank overhears them and decides to put a stop to things by sucker punching Cornelia in the guts. In the following scene, we see Marcus wondering if Cornelia betrayed him, as she never shows up. And then we see the rest of the ending. Well, that's what happens if you don't have the hammer. If you do have it though, you'll get to see an additional scene before this one, where Blank tells the king about what happened. While Blank was probably expecting a reward for what he did, the king decided that Blank can't be trusted, and sucker slashes Blank with a sword. That's about the gist of it. You may be wondering, well, what the heck does Creepy Cinna's dumb hammer have to do with any of this? The answer is nothing. I mean, it would have made some kind of sense if the hammer was itself involved in the extra scene, but it's not. Even Cinna isn't involved in any way, so I'm not sure what the heck is happening here. Maybe someone on the development team had a thing for Cinna for some weird reason? In any case, the scene definitely isn't a big deal, but it does exist, I guess. And would you believe that we aren't done talking about this hammer yet? We'll circle back to it in a moment. Next, let's talk about some secret bosses. Pretty much all Final Fantasy games have them, and this one is no exception. The first one I want to talk about can be fought in the library of Alexandria Castle. You actually only have 2 opportunities to fight this boss in the entire game. The first is when you're trying to rescue Dagger from the castle's basement, and the second is when you're looking for Dagger and Eiko during the Battle of Alexandria. In the library, if you examine this bookshelf, a prompt will come up asking if you want to listen. And if you do, you'll be thrown into battle with the entity known as Tantarian, which turns out to be a book. I guess that makes sense. This is no ordinary book though. This one is possessed by some kind of spirit. In order to bring it out of the book, you're gonna have to find it first. Every time you attack Tantarian, depending on how much damage you do, it'll open a page from the book. There are a total of 200 potential pages that can be found this way. The page number that you land on depends on how much damage Tantarian has received overall. So if the first attack did 31 damage, we get page 31. If the next attack does 14 damage, we go to page 45. This goes on until you do over 200 cumulative damage, in which case the page counter goes back to 0. What you need to do is get to a page between 150 and 200. If you do, the entity hiding within the book will finally reveal itself, and it's kinda cute, to be honest. While in the book form, Tantarian has very high defenses, so the only way to deal any real damage is to get the spirit out first. You have to deal with it carefully though. If you use a physical attack on it, it will immediately go back into the book, and you'll have to play the page finding game all over again. Magic would be fine though. In this form, it's weak to fire type attacks, so using attacks like Fira would be the way to go. It can still eventually go back into the book anyway, but using magic attacks gives you the opportunity to deal a nice chunk of damage. In terms of attacks, all the nasty ones are only used in the book form. Paper Storm can be devastating if you're not prepared for it. While the entity is out in the open, the only attack it'll use is Poison, which can be easily dealt with. If you take on this boss at the earliest possible opportunity, then you may have a much more difficult time with it. But you'll also have the chance to steal Demon's Mail from it, which is a really powerful piece of gear that early in the game. If you're curious about Tantarian's overall design, it seems to be heavily inspired by the page enemies from Final Fantasy V. The entity looks like a much cuter version of the page 64 enemy. Page 128 seems to be on the back of the book, while page 256 appears to be on the front of the book. Anyway, Tantarian is a pretty fun optional boss, and if you're not a fan of books, then you'll have a nice time burning this one without feeling guilty about it. Now, to find the next optional boss, you'll need to go into the woods to touch some grass and catch some frogs. If you visit a Q's marsh while you have Kina in your party, you'll be able to play a frog catching minigame, because frogs are very good, according to Kina. Frog catching has three main purposes. The first is that it powers up Kina's ultimate move, Frog Drop. The second, of course, is for the love of the game. I'm sure there are many out there who just enjoy the sensation of holding some slippery, thick things in their hands. Sometimes it's about the journey and not the destination, right? But if you're only interested in the destination, then you'll have to catch a lot of frogs, 99 to be precise. You see, every now and then, Quail, who is Kina's master, will show up to reward Kina for his hard work and dedication. If you're able to catch 99 frogs though, then before giving you the final reward, Quail will challenge you to a battle. While he may not seem all that tough, Quail is a very chonky boy. He has 65,535 HP. No boss in the entire game has more HP than this guy. There is one other enemy that actually has the exact same amount of HP, but we'll talk about that later. Besides the gargantuan HP, the rest of the stats are actually quite low, so you won't have much trouble hitting Quail really hard. In terms of offense, Quail can cause a whole bunch of status effects, like Confusion, Poison, and Mini. Confusion can be really problematic, so make sure that your party is immune to that. Beyond that, Quail absorbs water and can deal water-based damage with Aqua Breath. You'll want to use Thunder-type attacks whenever possible, as Quail is weak to that element. But really, this boss doesn't really require a specific setup to beat, and it doesn't have any gimmicks like the Tantarian battle. You might want to try and steal from Quail though. Besides stuff like ninja gear and Glutton's robe, it's also holding a robe of lords, although there's a ridiculously low chance of stealing it. Once you've stolen what you need to, keep hacking away at Kina's master until it stops moving. For winning, you'll get Kina's strongest weapon, the Gastro Fork. The student has finally become the master. Our next boss requires quite a bit of work to find. After getting our hands on a chocobo, we get access to a pretty long and elaborate side quest known as Chocobo Hot and Cold. It basically involves using our choco friend as a glorified metal detector, except it can detect non-metal things. As you continue to make progress with this side quest, the chocobo will gain new powers, allowing it to do stuff like run on mountains and even on water. like that one guy people always talk about. Eventually, it'll also gain the ability to fly. Now, we need to find a slow-moving shadow, which can appear in one of 5 possible locations. Once you find it, you need to feed the chocobo a dead pepper while hovering over it. It'll go a little crazy afterwards. With that done, we'll arrive in the Chocobo Air Garden. A very cool place, for sure. If we make our way to this weird rock formation, we'll find what looks like an Eidolon cave. A Moogle will show up and tell us not to interact with it. Cause if we do, we'll go straight into a battle with, arguably, one of the toughest secret bosses in all of Final Fantasy, Ozma. Now, I'm not gonna spend too much time talking about this floating ball of horrors, as I've already made an entire video about it, and the mystery surrounding it. As for the battle, well, basically, unless you are specifically prepared to face it, you're gonna be in for a rough ride. Ozma can annihilate your party very easily. Even if you take the time to prepare for it, Ozma can still just destroy you with Meteor, which has the potential to do max damage to the entire party. If you'd like more information about Ozma, do check out the video I've made about it, as I go into details about the battle itself too. If you do manage to outlast this anomaly, you'll get a Pumice as your reward. What does the Pumice do? It allows Dagger to learn her ultimate summon, Arc. But more importantly, you know what they say. No girl can resist a man who has beaten Ozma. Next, in Memoria, the game's final dungeon, there's a mysterious voice that can be interacted with in the birth room. If we go off screen here and check the rocks, the voice will ask us to leave. But if we decide to not do that, then we'll be thrust into battle with the terrifying entity known as Hades. While Hades does look very scary, it's actually not as strong as Ozma. In fact, if you beat Ozma before facing Hades, he'll actually be shocked by that fact. Although I don't really know what he means by "I've come too far to retreat." Like, he was just lying around in the rocks, as far as I could tell. Anyway, Hades has 2 main attacks that can cause problems. Whenever you see a countdown, that means Hades is preparing for one of them. The curse attack deals random damage and causes a whole bunch of negative status effects. Doomsday can cause some serious shadow elemental damage to the entire party, while healing Hades in the process. But if you have shadow absorbing equipment on your party, then you wouldn't have to worry about Doomsday at all. Interestingly enough, Ozma also has access to both Curse and Doomsday. I wonder if more of a connection was intended between these two at some point during development. But really, Hades isn't all that hard to defeat, if you make some necessary preparations beforehand. Defeating Hades unlocks the ultimate synthesis shop. You remember that hammer from earlier, right? So you could keep it in your inventory to see that extra ending scene. Or you could use it to create something epic here. Specifically, you can create the Tin Armor, which is Steiner's ultimate, well, armor. Its description says, tin armor that looks like a toy. Huh. Very cool, I guess. You could also create a Pumice here if you've got 2 Pumice pieces. Normally, defeating Ozma is the only way to get the complete Pumice, but there are 2 other Pumice pieces in the world. One acquired from the Ark boss fight in Oivier, and the other can be found through the Hot and Cold side quest. You could also create Save the Queen, which is supposed to be Beatrix's weapon. Beatrix is a character who we get to use very briefly in the game, as she never becomes a permanent member of the party. As for Save the Queen, none of your characters can actually equip it, so it's more or less a collectible. Here's the fun fact about Hades. During the development of Final Fantasy IX, Hades was supposed to be the final boss instead of Necron. The change to Necron was made quite late in development, it seems, as even the stage where we fight Necron seems like it was built for Hades. I suppose the developers wanted a more abstract entity as the final boss. Poor old Hades ended up forgotten in the rocks. Very sad. Anyway, while those were the proper intended secret bosses of the game, there is one more enemy out there that is practically a super boss too. As you go through the game, you may occasionally run into friendly monsters who mean you no harm. Instead, they want something from you, and if you give them what they ask for, they'll just leave and give you a bunch of AP. There's actually a side quest involving these friendly monsters. The first 8 can be found in any order, as long as you know where they spawn. If you find them in the intended order, then the last few will give you the item that the one after them will ask for, which makes things a bit easier. The 9th one, the friendly Yan, is special though. It will immediately run away if you haven't taken care of the first 8. But if you have done that, then it'll ask you for a diamond. If you do give it the diamond, then the Yan will say, "Now you can reach the round guy." The purpose of this side quest is to make the Ozma fight a bit easier. If you don't do this quest, then your normal attacks simply won't reach Ozma. In addition, Ozma will absorb shadow elemental attacks. But after giving these creatures the random shiny objects that they ask for, Ozma will not only be reachable by your normal attacks, but it will also be hurt by the shadow element. That's kinda important because one of its main attacks, Doomsday, is a shadow elemental attack that hits everyone on the field. So without the quest, it'll hurt the party and heal itself at the same time. But you could decide to not give the friendly Yan the diamond it's after, because maybe you'd like to beat the diddly out of it instead. If you try to attack any of the other friendly monsters, they'll just run away. But like I said, this friendly Yan is special. If you don't give it the diamond in a reasonable amount of time, it will get pissed and say, "You're not giving me any?" Your audacity to ignore its request will make it want to end your existence. This thing might look cute, but it's actually, in terms of raw numbers, the strongest enemy in the entire game. To give you an example, let's take a quick look at some of Ozma's stats. Ozma had 30 defense, 10 evade, 70 magic defense, and 12 magic evasion. In comparison, the friendly Yan has 255 in all of those stats. That's absolutely bizarre, right? Also, when it comes to HP, it has the highest in the entire game, tied with Quail. Big things come in small packages, after all. In terms of offense, it basically has one move, which is called Ba. That is the strongest physical attack in the whole game. There's no way to absorb it or nullify it, so you'll have to be prepared to get hurt. It also causes silence, but the raw power behind this move is something you will have to respect, or it'll just destroy you very quickly. The strategy for beating it is pretty simple actually. Because of its absurd defenses, you'll need to use moves that bypass defenses entirely, like Freya's Dragon Crest or Kina's Frog Drop. Any other attack will barely scratch this monster. These attacks though can cause max damage guaranteed, if you take the time to power them up. Remember, the friendly Yan will retaliate with Ba every time you damage it, so you have to make sure that your party is healthy enough to take the hit every time you launch an attack. But as long as you're careful and you keep hitting it with your best attacks, you'll eventually overcome this adorable demon. For winning, you'll get 50 AP and a Rosetta ring. That's it. You've beaten the strongest enemy in Final Fantasy IX. But if you want to smack it around some more, you could battle it over and over again. I don't know why you'd want to, as there isn't any other enemy in the game that you'd want to grind for. But if you love grinding just for the sake of it, then you can keep farming the friendly Yan for AP, like some kind of psychopath. And that brings us to the final secret that I want to talk about today. This one is quite infamous for being so batshit insane that even trying to get it is probably not worthwhile for anyone, unless you're a crazy completionist. What you need to do is play through the whole game and pretty much get to the end of the final dungeon in under 12 hours. Yup, you're basically on a speedrun. While it is doable, you're not gonna have a very fun time, I imagine. Unless crazy challenges like this are what make you feel all sparkly and nice on the inside. If you're able to get to this specific location in time, then you'll be able to check this pillar on the right. You'll find a letter by someone named Enkidu, who says that they found 2 swords. Enkidu kept the Excalibur and left behind the other one, and then went looking for the tin armor, which, if you remember, we were able to synthesize using the hammer earlier. The letter is addressed to Gil. In case you're wondering who that is, well, that's Gilgamesh, a character who has appeared in multiple Final Fantasy games. Enkidu is a recurring partner for Gilgamesh. So what did Enkidu leave behind? It's the sequel to the legendary sword, Excalibur. This is our reward for getting here as fast as possible. Excalibur 2 is Steiner's strongest weapon. While it is definitely cool, it really isn't worth the hassle, strictly speaking from a gameplay perspective. Final Fantasy IX isn't really that hard to begin with, and even when it comes to the toughest optional bosses, you would have a much better time relying on the special attacks that can always hit for max damage. But obviously, it's intended as an achievement for those who can beat this game's final challenge. Excalibur 2 has made a few appearances in other Final Fantasy games, like in Final Fantasy Tactics Advance and even Dissidia, the Final Fantasy fighting game. In any case, if you really want to flex on Ozma, you can get Excalibur 2 and backtrack all the way to it. It may seem excessive, but if you really hate Ozma, then this is definitely the way to go. And there you have it. Which one of these secrets was your favorite? Have you tried to antagonize the friendly Yan before? Why do you think Hades was demoted and replaced by Necron? Would you agree that Ozma is one of the cutest waifus of all time? Do let me know everything in the comments. Well, that's gonna do it for today. But there are plenty of secrets to be found in the other Final Fantasy games. And there are plenty of mysteries that need to be solved too. You know, I've always been intrigued by Penance from Final Fantasy X. Maybe it's time to figure out what's going on with that soon. Till then, take care and I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.